there's no bad new idea. Like, I think the people that, will be winning, whatever that means, in the next decade will be those that decided to try something that hasn't been done before.
Everything leads to growth with the National Association for Sales Professionals. The Leads to Growth podcast with the National Association for Sales Professionals provides in-depth discussions sharing the best sales, prospecting, influence, and communication skills, as well as sales training techniques to take your professional sales career to the next level.
Hello again, and welcome back to another National Association of Sales Professionals podcast, where everything leads to growth. That's right, y'all. Everything does leads to growth. So why not choose what you're going to grow towards, right? Today, I've got an amazing guest, somebody I've been very excited to bring on. I feel like I know her. I catch her video clips on LinkedIn all the time. And when you subscribe to somebody and they hit your news feed all the time and you feel like you've built up a relationship with them. I probably jumped on a little too comfortable in our very first conversation, but that's all right. That's how we go. So I've got with us today, Megan Bowen. Am I saying that right, Bowen?
Yep, right on.
I ever asked. All right. So Megan has spent the last 15 years working in B2B tech startups, leading customer success, account management, sales, marketing, operations. She's done a little bit of everything, y'all. She's been CEO whisperer with a lot of people out there, and I think she's currently doing that now as a COO and CCO at Refine Labs. She's got an amazing podcast, which you really have to check out. It's so authentic and high level at the same time, the Unwritten Playbook Podcast. And her slogan there is, "We're smart and interesting people are breaking away from the way things have been and charting a new path." And I just really love what she's all about. So Megan, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. Really excited to dig into the conversation today. Appreciate the lovely introduction.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, you precede yourself very well. So if you've not listened to Megan's podcast, she always leads with this beautiful question. And I think the first time I heard it, she was interviewing Christine Rogers, who we've had on, and just love her to death. And just the opening of that was just really defined who she was. So go check out that podcast. But I'm going to lead with your question, Megan. What is the status quo that you reject and why?
I love this. You're flipping the script on me. So I will say I have lots of status quos that I reject, but I think the one that I want to talk about today and has been really top of mind for me recently, and I also think is broad enough to be representative of how I think about things, is really rejecting the notion of best practices. And encouraging people to go back to basic common sense and critical thinking and, making your own decisions about how to go about doing something. I think, sure, like there are some benefits to different best practices out there in the market and in the world. Like if people have figured out how to do certain things, there's certainly nothing wrong with learning from other people's experience and applying that to your context. But I feel like we've kind of gotten to an extreme in this regard where it's almost like people just want to be told exactly what to do and then go do those things. And I think what it's creating is a lack of people thinking for themselves, a lack of applying basic common sense, which sometimes is the way to get your answer.
Absolutely. I know. I love that too, because the best practices are there for a foundation, for a place to start. Right? Like it's, what path did they take? Okay, great. Well, now I know the direction at least, but if you're not looking at your results and then making those adjustments, then you're like every other person that ends up in my LinkedIn in-mail box, right? It's just generic blah, blah, blah. And so I really love that thinking for yourself.
Yeah. And especially now, like, I think 10 years from now, when human society look back on this time period, it will be described as the pandemic changed everything. It was pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And I think we're at a really interesting time right now where nothing, no assumption should go unchallenged, right? No current reality should go unscrutinized. There's no bad new idea. Like, I think the people that, will be winning, whatever that means, in the next decade will be those that decided to try something that hasn't been done before, and to pave a new way. And I think that like anyone can do it. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a brilliant business person. I think it's like keeping your eyes open, thinking bigger, philosophically, psychologically, without constraints, brainstorming about what you would want something to be like, and asking yourself how you might get there. And so I think the timing is really key. And I think that if more people can be thinking about things like that, we're going to see, I think, a surgence of, new categories and new products and new ideas, new way of living, new way of working. And so, especially right now, I think that is a status quo that should be consistently rejected.
I love that. I really do. I heard somebody say recently, I think we published in a blog post, the CEO of Microsoft said we went through 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. Through this pandemic and quarantine, it was just forced. And so the norms have been pushed beyond that because everything's changed. You should really, like you said, you put it in one of your amazing blog posts recently as well, or your LinkedIn posts, and you said, you gave a list of questions to ask yourself. I think it was about purpose in this manner. Mm-hmm. But far too often, we approach a situation and ask the wrong questions. What did they do? What is everybody else doing? We don't take the time to go, well, what would be ideal? What would we do if anything were possible? What does the customer want? Mm-hmm. Like to really take the time to go through that. It's a beautiful process. And then to take the time to really vulnerably answer those things. And I think that's where you say, thinking for yourself, especially, in the tech world, there's things happening so fast that everybody's doing, they're doing this. But there are so many different options out there to really take the time and then to take the bold move to try something and to not be afraid that it's the right or wrong thing, but that you're going to learn and grow from it. So I'd love to hear something from you, because I always hear on your podcast your vulnerable stories, and it seems to be a characteristic of your growth is the vulnerable times you've gone through. And so I'd love for you to share a story about that, something that you've learned and grown through in your career learning, where vulnerability was at the center of your growth and that maybe helped you propel to another level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I think one story or one experience that comes to mind when I was at a company called Managed by Q, my scope really drastically changed at that company from my previous roles. I went from really, being an account manager, customer success manager, and building those teams to becoming COO and actually having, responsibility and oversight over lots of different functions: marketing, sales, operations, success, support, et cetera. I think, what was really interesting, and because I had developed such an expertise in customer success and felt so confident building that team, when you're kind of thrust into a position where you're now managing functions that you have little to no experience in, I think that there's a couple of different ways that people often will respond to that. I think one is, believing that you have to be the all-knowing, like powerful leader and like fake it till you make it, and just like act like you know what you're doing and like, just stick to your guns, whether you're right or wrong. I think, or the path that I chose, and I think that is actually the better option to consider, is being honest about what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and focusing on, as a team, how can I create the conditions for us to be successful, regardless of how much I know about sales or marketing at the time, right? And so when I took on that new position, I was really upfront with the marketing leader and the sales leader at the time, and was like, you guys are the experts in marketing and sales, right? Like, I know enough to be dangerous maybe, but I know that this is not my area of expertise, right? And so instead of trying to pretend like I knew everything, instead of trying to like over optimize on deep diving into those things, thinking that expertise in those areas is the answer to that question, the conclusion that I came to was, I don't need to be an expert in marketing. I don't need to be an expert in sales. I need to create the conditions so my leaders of those functions can step up and drive the strategy, right? I can be their sounding board, which I'm good at. I can ask them questions. I can provide them support. I can remove obstacles. I can challenge some of their assumptions. But if they feel strongly and they present what seems like a reasonable and good strategy, I'm going to give them an opportunity to do it. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't work, right? And regardless of that, ultimately as the leader, you're responsible for all of it. And so I took that approach. I was just really upfront of like, I'm not good at this. Like, these are the things I am good at. So I'm going to focus on these things. I'm going to lean on you for those things. And then I think that was really, the first time that I think I appreciated one of the burdens of leadership, which is like, your team is going to make mistakes. There's no way to avoid that. And understanding that, even if you had nothing to do with that mistake, it's your responsibility or your fault, right? And I think I went through some times there where, as a new COO, if something happened, I had moments where I would deflect and be like, well, I really let them make that decision. So that's not on me, right? And in hindsight, I'm not proud of those moments, right? Like I should have taken more responsibility regardless of my level of involvement in any particular, decision. So anyway, I think that story highlights a couple things of like, I think, it's okay to not know everything. You can be a leader and effectively lead teams or functions that you're not experienced in if you just focus on what leaders should be doing. Casting a vision, upholding values, empowering people, holding them accountable, creating space, removing obstacles, right? You don't need to be an expert in a particular function to do those things. And then I think the other piece of it is, like, no one's perfect, right? I'm not perfect. I've made a ton of mistakes. And it's like, try to learn from those mistakes. You're never going to prevent them, and just try to make sure that you take those with you so that you don't repeat them again and again.
I love that. She took the opportunity to talk about something where it wasn't a win, that it was a learn, that she maybe didn't execute in the way that she wanted to, but learned from that. And that's the vulnerability reason I brought you on, is because anybody else would have talked about, the time when I did do the right thing and it really worked out. I learned from my mistakes, and I love that about you. That's very cool. So I'd love to know what aspect or what how does culture play a role in your ability to do these things?
Yeah. And this is a fascinating topic because I think, I think earlier in my career, I thought, okay, you can create culture and you can mold it and you can make it to be a certain thing. And with really small groups of people, I think that's true. But I think what I've learned in building teams across different companies, and even now in my role, sort of building our small company, I joined, we had 6 people. We're going to be 22 people, I think, by next week, within 9 months. I think what I've really realized is there are a couple of really key things that predominantly drive culture. And so it's really focusing on those things that you can control. And then it's making the right decisions at the right times to protect the culture that is created, not that you create, but that is ultimately created by the environment you create. And so first, I think it's really important to define your values. I think that, at the end of the day, a set of shared values is what holds a high performing team together, right? And so being really upfront about those values in the recruiting process, in the onboarding process, vetting people for them so that you're not bringing someone in that's going to be directly opposed to the most important things that you believe in as a company. So that's key. I think the second is you have to I feel like it like feels harsh to say this, but like you have to, reward the behavior that you want to see more of, and you have to punish the behavior that you don't want to see more of. And punish is maybe a rough word. It's like you should not tolerate people that act in a way that you're not okay with. And so whether that's, providing direct feedback, whether that's, managing someone out of an organization, there can be different solutions to that problem. But it's really important that as a leader, you're not afraid to do that. Like the classic mistake is that you have a high performing person that's a jerk, right? And you keep them around because they always hit their numbers or whatever it is. And that's just not good for anyone, right? Like no jerks allowed.
It speaks to alignment too, right? Because a company can't say, well, here's our values, here's who we are. But yeah, Jim, he can do whatever the hell he wants to. I mean, his numbers are there. So, it's incongruent. And then once you've done that, you've fractured everything.
It doesn't work. Yeah. I think another really important component to this that I didn't really realize until much later in my career is you have to create psychological safety for people. If I look back at any of the toxic work environments I was a part of, it was fueled by fear and insecurity. And when people are afraid, they do things that they would not otherwise do. And so that is a key that you have to make people feel like it's okay for them to make a mistake. They can ask any question that they want. They can have a bad day because we all have bad days. And for me, the most effective way at creating psychological safety has been modeling it. So admitting your own mistakes publicly to the team, providing feedback on others' mistakes in private so that they don't feel that they were called out in front of everyone, finding opportunities on an individual by individual basis to give them the time or the space or the support that they need based on what's going on with them. And it's hard to do, but that I think is so important, because as soon as fear gets into the mix, it doesn't matter if you do everything else right. It will just take over. It's a powerful emotion, and people do weird things when they're afraid.
This is very true. It is it puts a whole set of blinders on and changes all perspectives and really creating a safe space where it's almost like exercising who we are. And you said at the very beginning too, because you can create a culture, but it's really about being the culture, right? It's really, the culture is not anything until you see it acting out and playing out before you in day-to-day actions and habits and changes too, right? Because usually when the conversation of culture is happening, it's in the process of changing culture or there being a challenge or the problem with the culture. So now it also becomes the leaders have to make those big leaps and changes that sometimes almost feel like they're stepping ahead of everything, but they have to be conscious and aligned from the very get-go. Because if the leadership isn't aligned with what they're saying, it's top down in the way that people look up. Always look up, and when the top isn't responding the way that we're told to respond at the bottom, then there's always going to be some fracture and is that who we really are? And you see it a lot in the new generation, like the millennials and the Gen Zs. Now they're looking for this, people talking about being a purpose-driven company, and then but look at the way that you handle all of our green initiatives. Like there's things that just aren't congruent, and people are looking for those things, and they're looking to be involved in something that's bigger and bigger than themselves, and something that's going to have an impact on the world.
That's so true. Yeah. That vision and the mission. And then I think that was sort of like the final point I wanted to make on this culture point is you have to communicate and repeat and reinforce, why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the long-term goal? What are we actually going to do in the near term to get us closer to that goal? And it's like a cliche word, but transparency, like this is how we're, progressing towards the goal. Here are some challenges or setbacks we've had that we have to overcome. The more information and the more of the story that you're constantly telling to your team keeps everyone moving in the right direction, and it reminds them of why they're doing what they're doing. And so that's really critical, because it's easy to get really busy and so focused on things and get frustrated by the day-to-day. And it's amazing how people can get through so many difficult things if they believe that it is in pursuit of something that they feel connected to. And I think people underestimate the amount of communication that's required to really nail that and to do that well. And on transparency, the last thing that I want to say is, like, in the absence of information, like, people will literally just make stuff up. And if you're not telling people enough information, they will make things up, which can then open up that door for fear to come back in, which is the culture killer in my mind.
I love that. It's some people tell me, oh, well, no, I answer every question they ask me. Well, no, that's not what transparency is. Transparency is giving them the answers to the questions they don't know to ask. It's being upfront with those things, telling them so they don't, because what you said is so brilliant. It's always going to be somebody's paying my check and I'm receiving the check. There's always that gap, right? There's a dependency there that's built in. And there's also a certainty that comes from an employee's position in a company or is about certainty. Right? I'm working with this company because it brings me certainty. I come in here, everything's normal. I get the paycheck. It's aligned with my vision. There's a lot and people need certainty. And when they're not getting the certainty from their employers, acting congruently with what they said they were going to do and being over communicative, Megan is exactly right. Our brains are beautiful, amazing things, but we stopped using our imagination for dreams when we were like 9, 10 years old. Now the imagination just works on protecting us, right? It's not looking at being a cowboy, riding a rocket ship on the moon anymore. Now it's like, who's out to get me? Like, what's going? Why is everybody
you play the worst case scenario game?
Yeah, exactly. So I love what you're saying there, and also too that it's not just putting the values on the wall and letting everybody know the vision and the mission in their onboarding packet. It is constant repetition and reminding them of that. You are the living, breathing version of that mission and vision when you are on that C-level team. And if you're not constantly radiating those words in that vision to them, they're going to forget because they got their own problems. They go home, they've got the struggles in the workplace that they have with their coworkers and the challenge of inferiority that they feel and the unworthiness sometimes that they feel and their own growth, right? So when the one thing that gives them certainty no longer gives them certainty, everything falls apart. So I just love how you spoke to that you're one of the big things that you speak about is your need to be a center of certainty for all of your company. And it really stands out in the way that every story, everything that you do is thought out through the other person's perspective. You have a very, what we call it a green, empowering personality type. It's very internally motivated, but externally focused. And you see things in a way that are from here, but in order to help others and help others see your intent in the right way. And it's a very beautiful, empathetic way to lead. When was there a trigger? Was there something that happened? Because I was looking back and I was like, I did see that your first year of school, you started out as a straight up hustler. Cutco Cutlery Rocket.
Yeah.
I mean,
selling knives.
Yeah, I love that. I got a whole set at the house, man, so don't worry about it. It's still here, still sharp, still amazing.
Finest set of cutlery, yeah, with a lifetime guarantee.
So there was a long journey of career and accelerating. Was there a time when things just clicked and you're like, you know what? It's no longer, as you and Christine were talking, it's no longer the good old boys, push, this masculine, who I am. I need to trust what's inside and continue to move and lead that way. Was there something that triggered that, or was it just little incremental steps along the way?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think it probably happened more incrementally along the way. I think it was a lot of different experiences that I had. I think, I've always been really ambitious. And so starting out my career, it was like, I am going to dominate the business world. I want to be I want to get to the C-suite. I want to be,
I see the hustle side, the push side of you too. I'm like, I know there's both sides of this person here.
So, that was the goal. And I was going to, relentlessly pursue that goal until it was mine. What was so interesting though, was when I finally got a promotion to a COO, I thought I thought that when that happened, that everything would change. I would have felt I made it. I would feel this sense of accomplishment and pride and satisfaction. And I think maybe that was one of the more defining moments, but I think I almost felt nothing. Mm-hmm. It was so strange. And actually, I even remember I was having an emotional conversation around that time. And I was almost I had a lot of negative or sort of sad emotion around it, which was really strange because it objectively was a great accomplishment, right? And so I think that's when I really realized, and at that particular time, I was working so hard that I was sacrificing my own self-care, which I think was a huge part of the equation of not feeling good about it, because I almost burnt myself out in pursuit of this goal. And it just really made me realize that it's not real contentment or satisfaction is not about those things. And it was a tough thing for me to get my mind around, because I was operating for 15 years that this was my summit, when I this was it. And then you finally get there and you realize that everything you were doing for 15 years was to get to this point that isn't actually I actually felt worse than before, so that was a big thing where I just really realized I need to actually take care of myself, and then ask myself those hard questions. What actually makes me happy? Where do I actually get that personal satisfaction from? And I think that it made me realize that at the end of the day, I get my energy when I'm able to help another person. So whether that's a team member, someone in my personal life, a customer, a CEO, I know that I have the ability to quickly tap into where another person is at, understand their strengths and weaknesses, what they're trying to accomplish, and help them get there faster. And I think it's it was that kind of, I guess, epiphany or acknowledgement of hey, I'm actually really good at this thing, and I can use this skill to help many, many people be successful. And that is actually what makes me feel like I'm doing something right and doing something good. And so now for me, it's less about, it's easy for me to say if I have a C-suite title now, I get that. And if it was Megan 10 years ago, I would have been whatever, I want the title, but the title doesn't actually mean anything, really. It doesn't. It's just a name that somebody gave you.
The words you say just resonate so much and so beautifully right now, because you went on a vision of having, and when you're like, wait, that's not even what I wanted. Then you shifted your vision to becoming, and now you're the being is now where you're finding the fulfillment. Because I think we often do that. Oh, I want the $1 million. I want the C-level. I want the thing. But you get the thing and you're like, well, this doesn't feel any different. I got the thing now, but it's not about the thing. It's about becoming the person who gets the thing and then maintains the thing and then takes the thing further along where it was, right? It's not about having $1 million. It's about doing something with that $1 million that makes the world a better place. It's not about becoming a C-level executive. It's about being the best that role could ever have, and taking that role to another level in your own unique, special, beautiful way, and allowing others to become better because you're there.
Yeah.
And I think
I was going to say, I have a question for you on this too, because what someone said this to me recently as I was kind of sharing a similar sentiment that I did just now. And they were just like, I really feel like you should be more selfish, Megan. It's it can't just be that you're doing this for other people. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. And I do completely, like, I've gotten much better at prioritizing my self-care. Like, I am the love of my life. Like, you have to put yourself
Absolutely.
first. And that's actually a prerequisite to actually showing up well for others. So it's not about being so selfless that you neglect yourself, but it was just fascinating to me. And what I realized was, I don't know if people can learn this without just going through their own version of it. Like I went to try to explain like my thought process or my rationale, and it just wasn't resonating. And then I just gave up. I was like, it's okay. You can just think that, like, you'll learn one day. Well, like, do you think I think people just have to figure it out on their own. Do you think?
Well, I also think that there's a difference, because I think, you know what? You are selfish. Every time you help somebody, it makes you feel better than anything that's ever made you feel in the world. Right? And the more you help people, good things continue to come to you. The more you help other people. I read a great book by Anthony DeMello. It's called Awareness. And he says, people will judge people based on selfish, but every act is selfish. If I don't want to take this call today, I'm doing it because I don't feel like taking the time today. If I want to help this person, it's not because I just want to help this person. I also want to feel good. I want to feel good I want to feel proud of myself. I want to have that alignment, because there's nothing more powerful in the world than when somebody acts aligned with their true identity. And when you are being your best self, you are a light and a powerful force in the world, and you attract all the beautiful things that you want. Don't let them fool you. You're selfish. You're living your dream life right now, right? I mean, so, and everything that you've ever dreamed is either with you now or on its way to you, because you live aligned with who you are. And
I was meant to ask you that question because I love that reframing. I'm going to use it.
Absolutely. No, and I believe it, because when you start, oh, is this selfish or is this not selfish? Well, I had a relationship one time, and it wasn't the greatest of relationships. And every time I tried to leave, I felt bad. I'm like, is this being selfish? Am I leaving this person No, it's stupid to stay in a relationship like that. Well, we both stay miserable in a relationship just for the sake of love.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any, that's a selfish thing too, because I don't want anybody to look bad at me. I don't want to feel bad about letting that person go. It's always selfish. We're always making it about our feelings and our justification. So I think when you can do selfish things that make the world a better place, to make the people around you better, that's a pretty damn good way to be selfish. So
well said.
Thank you very much. Well, listen, Megan, this was amazing. I truly appreciate you spending some time. I feel like we talked like old friends, and I really love, just there's this beautiful alignment, and it's thinking for yourself. It's not like we both read the same books. No, what's right is right, and what you learn, and you learn by asking questions. Megan is one of the best about asking questions for herself and for her clients and for the people around her. That's how you help people learn, right? My dad told me the stove was hot. I still touch the stove, right? Hey, do you want to know what it feels like to be burned? Do you want to know what it feels like to have the skin like fry off your hand? No. Well, now don't touch the stove. That's what will happen. It's a much better way to learn is through questions, right? And sometimes we still have to learn through experience. But that's the part of life that's the best part, right? Because everything leads to growth, y'all. So that's it for us, y'all. We are done for today. Thank you so much, Megan, for being here. Megan, where can our audience follow you? Tell them about your podcast and where they can get that at.
Yeah, definitely. My podcast is called The Unwritten Playbook, anywhere where you listen, Apple, Spotify, and any other channel. And I am also pretty active on LinkedIn. It's my only social media platform, but I like to post lessons learned or helpful questions or helpful tips based on my experience. So find me there.
One of my favorite follows, y'all. Definitely get on that one. I will put a link to the LinkedIn and the podcast in the notes here. So, all right, y'all, listen, if you enjoyed the podcast today, if you had a good time, don't even worry about writing a review. Just go ahead and click those little stars over there and leave a rating, right? Just if you like this, just go ahead and click those stars, leave a rating. That's the one thing I'm asking you to do today. And then tune in the next time when we're back again. Have a great day, y'all. That's Leads to Growth with NASP.